idea. We go with the airbag trick.
That's not gonna work.
If it worked with guys, why won't it work for girls?
Because guys are idiots.
It's a little hard to call the cops without a phone.
Give us that back!
No!
Oh!
What the?
It's called a cord, dumbass!
Give old people phone!
Those girls are out of control.
Get away from me! They're using their sexuality as a weapon. Someone help me!
Get out of here, you animals!
This isn't working! You're only making them sexier!
They don't understand.
Welcome to another episode of Red Reviews. Today we're covering Neighbors 2, the sequel to Neighbors. If you're wondering for the scenery change, if you watched my last video, I said I had a wedding this weekend, so I'm kind of doing these reviews wherever I can, and that just happens to bring me here to this lovely room, which was the room of my youth. This was my room at my parents' house, so that is why it's kind of bland since I moved out. My parents never really did anything else with it, so I apologize for the blandness of the background and scenery in this video. We'll get back to my old place, and we'll get all the fancy movies and movie memorabilia behind me next time. But now, with that out of the way, let's talk about Neighbors 2, Sorority Rising. Now, it does fall into the tropes of what a sequel usually does, and that is we have to take the same plot, whether it's Hangover Part 2, Die Hard 2, Die Harder, Tremors 2, just take any movie. What's the sequel? So we got to raise the stakes, but we have to keep sort of the same storylines. You got to do the same thing, but do it differently and try and recapture the same magic. And they do a fairly good job, actually, in Neighbors 2, Sorority Rising. You know, at the beginning, of course, you're just like, really? Now we're going to have a sorority move in. Of course, we had a fraternity in the first one, and now we have a sorority, and they have to go to war. But they do a pretty good job. The jokes land. It is funny. The characters actually, which surprised me in a comedy sometimes, character development kind of goes by the wayside, but every character does have development in this movie, from Zac Efron and Seth Rogen and Rose Byrne extending their family. They have another child on the way, and their quirky friends, they have their first child on the way, and they bring back most all, I think, if not everyone from the original in some capacity or another, even if like the Delta Psi fraternity brothers, they're in it for, just a few, not very much, but they're still in it. We get to see where they are at in their lives and where things are taking them. So for a comedy, especially for a sequel comedy, that was kind of a surprise hit, I think, it actually does a really good job of furthering the characters and furthering the story. And what surprised me a lot in this movie, and what's been happening recently with Seth Rogen's movies, and you can say this about The Night Before too, as that one was kind of just a comedy first and foremost, but in the end, it did have a lot to do with growing up and choices that we face in life and friendships and what we have to go through and the bond of friendship, still maintaining that and how important it is. And you could say that this one kind of is the same thing. His comedies have gotten to the point where he actually has a lot of heart behind the jokes. So this one, a lot of the girls being their first time, they're freshmen in college, and they're worried about not having any friends and falling into the kind of life that they lived in high school or colleges. If you ever go to college, it was like kind of like the reset button in your life. Once again, you get a chance to clean the slate and be whoever you want to be. But at first, it is a little overwhelming. So you experience that with these girls, is they're afraid. This is the first time they're away from home, and you see them grow as characters and see them become friends and what the sisterhood really means to them. And you see, of course, Rose Byrne and I said Seth Rogen becoming parents again, and them growing as characters. As they have flaws, and then they make jokes about the flaws of being parents, but they also take responsibility, and we're not perfect parents. And it also plays on the fact that one day their daughter will grow up, and hopefully it might be like these sorority girls, where we kind of all children at one point leave the nest of home, and what that does to our parents. And then, of course, we go off and have children, and then the cycle just keeps going and going. So when you start to deconstruct what the movie is about emotionally, it actually was quite surprising that you can get away with that in a comedy where you can also have several jokes about babies playing with vibrators and all the drug use and the filthy language and stuff like that. So it's fun that you can get that on so many different levels from a Seth Rogen comedy, because he's come a long way since Superbad back in the day. So I really did enjoy this movie. I laughed quite a bit. I don't know if it was as good as the first one, as many sequels usually aren't. There's something about um, introducing characters for the first time and situations for the first time. It's always much more memorable than the second time you do it around. And like I said, you don't want to keep going back to the well. So I opened Neighbors 3. I don't know what would move in next door. But now at the end of the movie, spoiler alert, they actually do move out. They get a new house. Seth Rogen and Rose Byrne's character, they get into a new house. And the actual sorority next door has grown so big that they've decided that they're going to go ahead and just rent the old house next to them. And so now Seth Rogen and Rose Byrne will now be their landlords. So everybody is a happy ending. And one to mention a character, of course, Zac Efron. And this is a guy who, I must admit, kind of suffered from my generation's Leonardo DiCaprio syndrome. And what I explain that as is if you are my age and you watch Titanic, he was the heartthrob, Leonardo DiCaprio, and what Leonardo was not. We weren't a fan of him as a guy. He was the heartthrob for all the ladies. Then he went off and he did a few other movies at the beach and whatnot. And he was always the same type of character, the pretty boy. And Zac Efron was kind of like that early in his career with kind of High School Musical and stuff that he would do. He was just a pretty boy, and it was not hard. It was very difficult to take him seriously. And now as he's moved on to other roles, he's actually started to impress me more. I liked him in Dirty Grandpa. I like him in Neighbors. So yeah, he's coming up in the new Baywatch movie, so he's working with The Rock. So he's actually growing as an actor, and I enjoy that. Same with Leonardo DiCaprio. As Leo started to take on more and more roles, so Shutter Island, Inception, and of course all of his work that's ever been nominated for an award of any kind, Blood Diamond and The Revenant. I know it's an extreme two people to compare, but maybe one day Zac Efron can get there. There's no reason that he can't. Just saying that as progression of an actor goes, just because you don't like them starting out, they can grow and impress you. So go out and check out Neighbors 2. It's really funny. If you enjoyed the first one, you're going to enjoy the second one. It's more of the same, but they don't. There's a few jokes where they go back to the well, as I was saying, but for the most part, it's new, inventive, and fun jokes. They kind of push the boundaries as they can in a sorority, or excuse me, a sorority. I was gonna make a comment about the sorority, and I get tripped up on my words. Because one other thing I want to mention, the tone, as I said, trying to hide these themes in there about the real world that real people face. Is there's a lot of comments about sexism in this. Is of course in the United States, fraternities can't throw parties, and what is sexism, and what is okay for guys to do, what's okay for girls to do, why can guys do things, why cannot girls do things. So it does play up a lot of that too. So it actually, as I can now continue to think more about the movie and deconstruct it, how much was happening in the background of the movie. So I'm going to rate it a solid B. I would have to give probably the first Neighbors a B+, so this one's slightly underneath it just because we are doing the same thing again, but I had just as much fun the second time around with the sorority versus the Neighbors as I did with the fraternity versus the Neighbors. So go check out Neighbors 2, Sorority Rising, and I'll catch you next time right here on Red Reviews. Like and subscribe. Bye.